Hello everyone, my name is Icy Guider, and welcome to the first episode in the 4SkidsTV YouTube hacking series. So as some of you may already be able to tell, the name of the series is named after the term skids, which is short for script kiddies. And if you don't know what a script kiddie is, it's essentially an insult used by other people in the hacking community to describe someone who only has the ability to use public tools in order to get whatever they need done on penetration tests or red team assessments. So it's someone who may not necessarily know how to program, may not necessarily know how to make their own tools, but has the ability to use tools that other people built in order to do whatever they need to do. So as I said before, this is typically used as an insult, but to me, it makes perfect sense, and especially for beginners or intermediate people in the hacking community, a lot of time there's no reason to write any tools because there are public tools that will do just fine. The same way that, if you're a web developer, you don't have to program your own web browser in order to start testing, your website because there's already web browsers out there. No one's going to call you a skid for downloading and using Firefox if you're a programmer. You know what I'm trying to say? So I think the same ideology should be applied to hacking, where if there's already a tool out there that can do it, then what's the point in building your own? And, so that's what this series is really going to focus on, is for intermediate and beginner penetration testers and red teamers. Essentially, just using the tools that are available on the internet already in order to do things like getting a shell, which is going to be this episode, data exfiltration, password dumping, and along with some other stuff. So stay tuned. So to start it off, in this video, we're going to be demonstrating multiple ways to get a shell on a fully up-to-date Windows server running Defender without needing any scripts or tools that can't be found publicly on the internet. So right now you can see I'm looking at a Kali Linux virtual machine that has Firefox open to a web page. This is a ping.php script that I wrote a few minutes ago that's currently running on a Windows Server 2019 virtual machine that currently has all the virus and threat protection settings enabled, as you can see here. And on the left here, you can see this is the actual ping.php script itself, first consisting of a form that takes an IP address, and when that form is submitted, the IP address is sent to this system call right here that tries to ping it 3 times. So if we go back to our Kali Linux virtual machine and then try to use this script as it was designed, we can pick an IP address. An easy one is Google's DNS server, which is 8.8.8.8. And don't cheat by looking at this stuff already, because we're going to get to that later. But if we just type that in and then submit it, we can clearly see that it looked like it worked with no problem. So it took our 8.8.8 and it pinged it 3 times. Right, but this is kind of boring and we want to actually do something with it because we want a shell, right? So doing a command injection attack on a utility like this is pretty trivial. All you need to do is add a command separator and then the command you're trying to run after that. So for this one, it could be something like 8.8.8.8, so that's the IP we're going to run at first. And then, because this is a Windows machine, we're going to use the and command separator, and then whatever command we're trying to run after the ping. So if we submit this, we can see that the output is pretty similar to what we got last time. We can see our ping output right here. But then below our ping output, we can also see the output of our whoami command to see that our command injection was successful. So now that we know that the command injection vulnerability is working, we want to turn it into a fully interactive reverse shell so that we don't have to run all of our commands through the ping utility. So this may come as a surprise to a few of you, but most of the publicly available tools that allow you to open up a reverse shell are actively being detected and blocked by Defender and other antivirus systems. So it's not like we're going to be able to just go out to the internet, download Netcat, and use that to open up a reverse shell for us. Oh wait, that's exactly what we're going to be able to do. So to start that, we're first just going to open up a terminal, and then we're going to log in to a public-facing DigitalOcean VPS server that's connected to the popbox.mu.com DNS. And essentially what we're going to be using this as is just a public-facing Linux server that we can download files from, an example being our Netcat binary, and accept the reverse shell to once we run it on our client. So if we log in, we can see that works with no issue. And now we're just going to run a few commands in order to download Netcat to our VPS and have it hosted, ready to be used by our client for a reverse shell. So first command we're going to want to run is this command to create the Netcat directory. Next command is going to be a command to cd into the Netcat directory. Then we're going to use wget to download the latest version of Netcat from eternallybored.org. And now we're going to unzip the Netcat archive. And we can see that we now have all of these files in this directory ready to be used. The file we're going to be using for our reverse shell is this nc64.exe file, as it's not actually being detected by Defender at the moment. And today it is March 7th, 2021. So we'll see at a later point if this binary does end up being detected, but as of now it's not, so it's perfect for us to use. So next command we're going to want to run is a screen command. And if you're not familiar with screen, essentially what this will do is just open up another terminal session for us on our Linux virtual private server. And now that we're here, we can see we're still in the same directory. We still have access to that nc64.exe file. But now we're going to run a simple Python HTTP server on port 80 so that these files can now be accessible over HTTP. So if I opened up a new tab and typed popbox.mu.com, you can see that we see all of the files in that directory now, and if we wanted to, we could download nc64.exe. So if we go back to our text document here, we can now focus on the commands we'll need to run through the ping utility in order to actually download the Netcat file to the target system and run it for a reverse shell. So those commands can be seen here. It's pretty simple. First command is just to invoke web request to our popbox.mu.com server for nc64.exe. And then we just save that to a file in the users/public directory. Next command, all we do is cd into that directory. And then the final command, we just run the Netcat file and give it our DigitalOcean VPS as the IP address and port 443 as the port to connect back on, and of course cmd.exe so that it's a reverse shell. So these commands are all that needs to run in order to get a reverse shell with our current setup. But you know, these are PowerShell commands that won't run if we just copy and pasted them into our command injection vulnerability. So what we need to do is we need to turn this into a one-line command, which is very easy. You just remove all of the new lines. But then we need to stick it into a PowerShell call because our ping utility isn't using PowerShell by default, it's using cmd.exe. So that will look like what we can see right here, which is a very simple PowerShell command. And then we give it a flag, which is EP, which stands for execution policy. And then we give it the value bypass so that there is no execution policy being used here. And then we simply run all of the commands that I showed earlier. So now demoing this should be pretty simple. I just have to go back to the DigitalOcean VPS server. And since this is a screen session, I want to put it in the background, and I can do that by doing a Control-AD. That will detach from the screen session, but still leave my Python simple HTTP server running. And now from here, I just want to open up a Netcat listener on port 443 so that it's ready and available to accept my reverse shell. And once that's done, all we should have to do is take the command that we generated in the last step, copy it, and give it to our ping.php. So if we do 8.8.8, we do and then we give it the command that we generated, we should see a reverse shell pop up in our terminal once we click submit. So let's try that out. So we hit submit, we go back to our terminal, and we can see we got a shell. We type who am I, we type dir, and it works great. And we can even confirm by going back to the Windows virtual machine that real-time protection is turned on and cloud-delivered protection is turned on. So we successfully bypassed Windows Defender in order to get a fully interactive shell on the machine via a vulnerability in a web application. So that's pretty cool. But what if Defender decides to finally block that version of Netcat? Are we done? Do we have no other ways to get a shell on a Windows machine that has antivirus enabled? If we sucked, then yes, that would be the answer. But we're trying to be good skids. We're trying to be like good hackers. So we shouldn't need to just rely on Netcat. So guess what? There are other ways to do this as well. The other easiest way being PowerShell. The public resource that we're going to be using to get a reverse shell via PowerShell is Bank Security's public gist page on GitHub. As you can see, he's uploaded 3 different PowerShell reverse shell scripts. And we're just going to go through each of them and see which ones work and which ones are detected by Defender. So to start off, we're just going to use this simple reverse shell number 3. We're going to copy its code. And we're going to put it into a new file. Now that we've done that, we need to find the IP address, which is right here. Because we don't want to use his IP address, we want to use ours. And since I have a DNS name for the DigitalOcean server, I'm just going to use that. So we have popbox.moo.com, and I'm going to leave the port as port 443. So now we can exit out of Nano, and if we cat the file, we can see we have the reverse shell saved with the correct host name and port. You can also see that this is a multi-line script. So similar to what we had to do with the PowerShell commands in order to download and run Netcat, we're going to have to turn this script into one line so that it can be used with our ping.php exploit. So to do that is very simple. All we have to do is cat the file and then pipe it to tr, give it the tag D flag, and then give it the new line character so that it will remove all new lines from the file. So we can see that it looked like it did that successfully. So we can copy that, paste it into our text editor. And the last thing we're going to need to do in order to get this to run is the same thing we did last time with our netcat commands, is wrap it in a PowerShell call. So we're doing PowerShell EP bypass and then quote and then sticking our PowerShell reverse shell in between 2 quotes. So if we take that and we copy it and we do our ping command one more time, 8.8.8 and then we paste the command we just generated. We just have to now go back to our popbox.moo.com server and make sure we're listening on port 443. And now when we submit this command, it should result in a reverse shell connecting back to us on port 443. So let's try it out. Okay, cool. So it looked like we got our shell. If we type who am I, we get a result back. And if we type dir, we see that also worked fine. So again, that's pretty cool. We were able to get a reverse shell via PowerShell without triggering AV at all. But what if antivirus decided to flag this script? And what if it decided to flag any PowerShell script? Would we be out of luck? Or is there something else that we can do with publicly available resources? That's what I'm going to show next. To do that, we can run some of the other reverse shell scripts from Bank Security's GitHub gist page and see what happens when we try to run those. So if we exit out of our shell, and then we go back to Bank Security's GitHub gist page, we can pick another one. For example, this one right here, reverse shell number 2, and just do what we did before. So we're going to copy it. We're going to put it into a new file. So we're just going to actually overwrite the old one. And then as we did last time, we're going to replace his IP address with our own server's DNS name, or rather domain name. Once we do that, we can see we've saved the file with no problem. And now, again, we want to turn it into a single line command. So if we do tr tag d and then give it the new line character, we get the single line version of that script. So we're going to copy it again, put it in our text editor, and as we did last time, give it the PowerShell call so that it can execute successfully. And now that this is done, we can simply copy it, go back to our ping.php page, enter in our test IP, and then paste our new PowerShell reverse shell. So again, before we actually submit it, we have to again log onto our server and open up a Netcat listener on port 443. So now, same thing as last time. If I click the submit button, it should show up in my Netcat listener as a reverse shell. So if I submit, the page looks as if it ran with no issue. However, I do notice there is no shell connecting back to me on my server. So now we may be wondering, what's the reason for this happening? Now, to determine why this is happening, it's pretty trivial. You can just go on to any Windows computer that has Defender up to date and enabled, and copy and paste the command that we created earlier. So I've just done that. And then open a new PowerShell or CMD prompt on the Windows computer, and then just paste in the command we were trying to send earlier. So if I do that and then I click enter, I can see that we get an error message stating this script contains malicious content and has been blocked by your antivirus software. So this is evidence that this script that we got from Bank Security's gist on GitHub is actually being actively detected by Defender when used in a one-line situation as we were using it as shown here. Now, there are a couple ways to get detected PowerShell scripts past antivirus. those being automatic obfuscation, manual obfuscation, encryption, all things we wouldn't want to do as a skid or couldn't do as a skid. So we're really looking for a publicly available resource that will just allow us to get PowerShell tools past antivirus. Now, does anything like that exist? Luckily for us, yes. There is a website, AMSI.fail, which is maintained by a man named Flangvik. I hope I got that right. Shout out to that guy. And essentially, it does exactly what it says right here. AMSI.fail generates obfuscated PowerShell snippets that break or disable AMSI for the current process. So if you are unaware, AMSI is essentially Microsoft's dynamic antivirus detection system. So that's what detects any PowerShell script that is executed on a Windows computer. So if you're able to disable AMSI, then you're able to run any PowerShell script you want. And luckily for us, we were able to come across this website that will automatically generate obfuscated bypasses for us. So there's not much left to do other than use it. So this website is as easy as it looks. All you have to do is click this generate button, which will provide you with an AMSI bypass. And to check to see if this AMSI bypass is being currently detected or not, you can just go to any Windows computer that's currently fully up to date, open up a PowerShell session, and then just try to run the command it gives you. If nothing happens and nothing is printed out, then that means that this is a fully valid and working AMSI bypass. So the one that we got has been confirmed to be working. So now from here, we're just going to copy it and paste it into a text editor. And now what we want to do is we want to run this command through our ping utility, and then right afterward run our detected PowerShell reverse shell script. So in order to do that, we first have to take our old PowerShell reverse shell script and copy it. And normally you would think we would just be able to paste it right after our AMSI bypass, but this actually won't work because it will all be looked at as the same and it will be detected because we are adding a detected PowerShell script to our undetected AMSI bypass. So what we want to actually do is separate these two scripts by uploading one to a website. For example, PowerShell or Pastebin. So we are taking our old PowerShell reverse shell script that was being detected. We're going to copy it and we're going to paste it in a new pastebin and set it unlisted and set the expiration date for an hour. Name it anything and then create a new paste. Now that we have our new paste, we want the raw link. And now we have our PowerShell reverse shell script that's being detected now uploaded onto a resource that we can pull it down from. So we want to copy our pastebin raw link. And then we're going to write a simple PowerShell line that will take our uploaded reverse shell script, request it with invoke web request, and then run it using IEX. So this will take our PowerShell script and run it, and we want to add that right after our AMSI bypass. And as shown earlier, we need to make sure that we wrap all of this in a PowerShell call so that it works when being used from our ping utility. So now that we have this ready to go, we're just going to copy it, go back to our ping utility, enter 8.8.8.8 and our and symbols, and then paste our new PowerShell command. And now if we go back to our Popbox server, we can see it's still listening on port 443. And once we click submit, we should see our reverse shell pop up right here. So if we click submit and go back to our terminal, we can see that we got a connection. If we try to do a who am I, we can see it worked perfectly fine. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the first episode of the 4SkidsTV series here on YouTube. To recap, we went over 3 different ways to obtain a reverse shell on a fully up-to-date Windows host that has antivirus enabled. First, being with an undetected Netcat executable. Second, being with an undetected Powershell reverse shell script. And third, being with a detected PowerShell script that we were able to execute with an AMSI bypass. So again, I hope you all enjoyed. I do plan on making at least 3 more videos in this series. Next video is either going to be data exfiltration or password dumping. So definitely subscribe and look out for those. And I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you on the next time.